You've spoken at length about the importance of exercise for longevity, so I don't think we need to start there. But let's say someone heard that message, is in that 50 plus, 65 plus category, hasn't been exercising, and they come to you and say, is it too late for me to start doing this? Is it too late for me to worry about this and start making changes? I think it'd be helpful for people first to hear, how would you even respond to that?
I've had the same response largely for many years now, so I realize that some people will have already heard me say this, whether it's on another podcast, but truthfully, I haven't come up with a better analogy yet. And it's really the analogy of saving for retirement. So, if you could be talking to somebody who's in high school or college and you were talking to them through the lens of, being a financial advisor, their fiduciary, what would you say? Well, you would say, listen, there's this really magical thing called compounding that Einstein basically said was the eighth wonder of the world. And you want to use it to maximum advantage. And to do that, you should start saving immediately, right? If you can start saving, before you even, when you get your first job, you should be saving. And if not, certainly by the time you get out of college, you should be saving. And if you do that, you don't really have to be that brilliant about it, right? You just, if you put all of your savings into an index fund at the age of 22, the probability that you are not going to be set when you retire is so low. Okay, so that's great. But what happens if you're talking to somebody who's 45 and due to life circumstances, like they just haven't been able to save. They haven't made enough money to even have some disposable saving income, or they've had, they've saved and lost or invested badly or something like that. Would you say, well, too bad? No, of course you wouldn't. So I guess the point here is it is never too late to start saving for retirement, but you must understand something, which is the longer you wait to start, the more you're likely going to have to save, the greater return you're going to need, and therefore probably the greater risk you're going to take. So it's never too late to start saving, and it's never too late to start exercising. But I want the message to be, don't wait because of some reason and say, well, I'm going to wait till I'm older because, so anyway, to me, that's the best way to think about this.
And I think it will be helpful for this conversation because we'll touch on these various aspects as it relates to exercise in this age population. But can you just remind people of your 4 pillars and kind of how you think about each of those pillars individually as someone is aging?
Yeah, and sometimes I think of it as 3 or 4, but I think at last I think I'd write about it as 4, so I'll stick with that. But it's basically stability, strength, aerobic efficiency, and peak aerobic output. And you could argue, well, those are just kind of a continuum. And so I would say, sure, but let's not get lost in the semantics. Those things, if you define them the way I do, kind of constitute everything. Again, stability is kind of a broad term, but embedded within stability is, everything that enables you to dissipate force safely, everything that enables you to have balance and flexibility, because believe it or not, those come from stability, right? If you have balance, by definition, you have stability. You can't have balance without stability. You can't actually have flexibility without stability. So we think of training as having a purpose, and of course, different types of training factor into these different activities. So there are some types of training that really kind of myopically hit one of these things. So if you're riding a bike like I do for your zone 2 training, well, first of all, riding a bike is a very one-dimensional activity. There are basically no degrees of freedom outside of you riding, pedaling the crank. And if you do it at a fixed power output that meets the criteria for zone 2, then you're very narrowly targeting that. You're doing very little for any of the other systems. And then conversely, there are other types of training like rucking with a heavy weight on hills, where actually you're targeting all 4 of those elements, right? That requires tremendous stability, moments of strength, large segments of aerobic base or aerobic efficiency, and moments of peak aerobic output and even anaerobic output. So that's just something to kind of, keep in mind.